Hello, welcome back to the garage. So, if you've been following the series, first time we made a mould and a complementary mould to fit on top of it to press guitar shapes. Last time we looked at joining wood together and getting it ready to press into that shape. So all that's left now is to actually go for it, press some wood into shape, try and build a guitar. Here we go. So now it's time to experiment. We have one big flat piece of thin maple, and we want to press it into the shape of a guitar. Now clearly you can't just put it between the two moulds and just press it because it's just going to crack. So we're going to have to do something else. We're going to have to apply some steam to it and then press it into place. Now that sounds like you need some sort of expensive steam generation apparatus. Not so. I'm going to use this, which is an old wallpaper stripper. This generates a bunch of steam. These are like about £20 off eBay or Amazon. They're not expensive. So we generate a load of steam, comes out of this pipe. We put this here into a bin liner, and then the bin liner and the piece of wood can lay on top of there. We let it soak for 5 or 10 minutes so that the wood's really soft and pliable. Then we pop the lid on and leave it to cool. That's the theory. Let's see what happens. I mean, there's several things. Well, there's one major thing that I'm concerned about, and that's this joint down the middle. If I was able to get hold of a piece of wood big enough, this would be fine. Because I've had to glue it with epoxy starts to go soft at about 70 or 80 degrees, and we're going to be heating up to 100. I've got a horrible suspicion that it's just going to come apart. So I'll try and press it, and I'll end up with two half bits of wood which are vaguely the shape of a guitar. Don't want that to happen, but we'll see. One bin liner. I've got some fairly hefty ones rather than the puny little ones, so otherwise the corner will just poke holes in it. So put that in there very carefully. There is our steam chamber. Now what I'm going to do is cut some holes, 2 or 3 holes in the back to let the steam out, otherwise it'll just turn into a big balloon. And then these bits I'm going to roll up like that, and I can put a clip on. Now I could put it with tape, but the problem is the tape will tend to fall apart as well. Some tape might stand the heat, but rather than risking it, so I'll roll those both up. I'll put a bulldog clip on either side, and I'll put the main steam tube in there, and I'll clip it either side. So the whole thing is essentially held firm. It doesn't matter if it leaks a bit. There's quite a lot of steam going in, and it'll leak out of here and it'll leak out of here, but as long as the steam's circulating around the wood, we should be good to go. So that's all tied up. I've got bulldog clips holding everything together, and remember this is going to go much floppier when it gets hot. All this plastic will go all much more floppy, so you'll probably get leaks, but we'll see how that goes. The other thing I'm going to do is to take that piece of wood, I'm going to put it underneath because I want to protect the mould from being sitting at 100 degrees for 10 minutes. So let that wood take it, and then when we're ready we can whip out the bit of wood and put the top on. Okay, the water's coming to the boil. We're starting to get steam out of here. This thing should now start to inflate. Now it's quite a it's quite a soft bag, so what I'm concerned about is the fact that you might just pierce the bag and the steam go everywhere. But let's see what happens. You can see it's starting to inflate now. Okay, it seems to be holding up. Leave this for 10 minutes. Well, I'll keep an eye on it for 10 minutes, but I'll leave it for 10 minutes and then come back. Now you notice that I've got some decent gloves on. This is steam, this is 100 degrees. This could very easily scald you, so try and be really careful. So what I'm going to do is whip out the piece of wood that's underneath and then stick the top on, press it down, and that's the point I'm going to switch off the steam. I'm going to leave the steam on as long as I can, because as soon as I switch that off it's going to start to cool. So I want everything lined up and ready so that I can do it in one go. So here goes. Right, switching off the steam now. Line this up. Let's put some weight on it. Okay, it's time to break it open and see what we got. It's had about an hour to cool down. So let's take the clips off and we'll see what's inside. Okay, so it feels like it's touching the bottom. I can't feel any gaps. So let's take it out the back. Do we have something that resembles a guitar? Well, it does have a bow on it, I can feel that. So I think maybe it's been successful. What I'm going to do is put it back in there, and then yeah, because I press it down, I'm not feeling any hollows. Okay, well what I'll do is I'll put the lid back on and let it dry for a little while, and then we'll see what it looks like. So it's been a few days now, in fact about a week or so since I put this in, and what I've been doing is trying to dry it out because obviously the wood is wet inside. So I've been putting a cloth on top of it, actually an old t-shirt, and then putting the top on again and just holding it flat whilst I try and dry it. It's dried very, very slowly. Unfortunately, been a bit of a disaster. So if I take the top off, you can see, you might be able to see, it started to go mouldy in certain places. It started to bend and generally deform into another shape. So it's clear that, and in fact it started to split. You can't see it here, but if I focus you in a little bit, it started to split. As it's dried, the wood is splitting all along here. It's been a bit of a disaster. So what it needs to be done is it needs to be much more stabilised. So what I'm going to do is put the plywood on next. So I'm going to probably just fix this into place so it doesn't move around while I do the plywood. I'll do the plywood on top of it because obviously the plywood is going to be the second layer, so it's not going to take the same shape. It's got to take the shape that this second layer creates, and the corners will be more rounded and the whole thing will be like 1.5 mil smaller either side. So I'm going to do that, put that on, and then what I'm going to try and do is to glue the two together. Now using epoxy in theory should stick even if the wood's wet. So if I can stick it together, because there's two layers and it's laminated, it should hold its position. So because the two layers will brace against each other if they're stuck, and then it should hold it in shape. So I can press it again, glue them together. I'll steam the plywood first on top of here, and then I'll get it out, let it dry for a couple of days just so that it's not soaking wet, and then I'm going to glue the two together, hold them in the press for a while until the glue's properly dry, and then in theory I should be able to take it out of the press and it should hold its shape. But we'll see, shall we? So here's the plywood, again glued together in the same way. Plywood's going to go on top. Plastic bag again, this is the same one I used last time. I managed to get away without actually puncturing it. So I'll stick this in the bag, we'll put the steam on, and then we'll put the top on and we'll get that bent. So there's some learning points from last time. I've got more clips on, and I've also got the whole thing on a board so that it will support this pipe, because last time I found this pipe flopped around and made it difficult to center the thing when I wanted to put it in place. So steam machine is switched on, we'll wait for that to inflate and then we'll get back to it. Okay, that's been going for 5 or 6 minutes now, so I can just put it in to make sure it's in the right place first of all. So got the right overlaps on it. Yep, that looks okay, that looks okay. And now we can put the top on. So again, the top with the guitar shape goes this way round. Put it on there. And that'll start to sink down, at which point I'm switching off the steam, letting it settle, get it in the middle, and then quickly get some weight on it, start that bending process, make sure it's completely in the middle, extra weight. There we are. I'll leave that to cool. So it's had about an hour to cool now, so let's take it out of the automatic power press. And now we can take it out of the bag. So take the bulldog clips off. And then we can pop the top off, like that. I can feel the shape of the guitar in it, so that's good. We'll take it out of the bag and then we'll put it back in the press just to dry off a little bit. So obviously it's not going to dry at all in the bag. Obviously finding the space is quite difficult. Finding where it actually fits because it's such a gentle curve. That feels a lot like it. So pop the lid back on. Like that, and I'll leave that to dry. Now, 2 bits are shaped, it's time to stick them together. So I'll take them out of this. Now this is only from a few hours after I steamed it into place. So this is still quite wet. It's not soaking, but it's still quite wet. And there's the underneath one. So let's put that to the side for a minute. So now I need to put glue on. So what I've done, I've taken my template and I've drawn around based on where it is in the mould. And so now I can draw another line, maybe about 2 or 3 centimetres around the outside of this. And that's going to be where I put the glue in. Now this is the glue I'm going to use. This is epoxy resin glue, and therefore it should stick to the wet wood. But it's 1 hour stuff. I don't want to be trying to do this in 5 minutes. So I've got some 1 hour stuff. I'll put that on, and then I'll stick the top on, and I'll put it back in the press, and I'll leave it overnight. So here goes. So I'm going to put this straight onto the wood. I'll use the actual wood as the mixing thing. And I don't know how much I'm going to need. It's very tempting to use the same resin that I used to do the mould with, but I'm not quite sure if that will stick. So put this whole tube out and we'll see how far that goes. I've got some other tubes just in case this isn't enough. And then I've got a little spreader which is made of a bit of wood. So that's the layer of glue spread. I've got it nice and thin, and it's already, you can see the shape of the guitar in the dark. You can see the wood starting to bow already because it's damp. It's starting to split. Now, I've got this pinned in place with a couple of staples. I just need to take those out before I stick the top on. Otherwise, they'll never come out. Okay, that's in place. Let's put the top back on. And make sure this is properly lined up because this is the final shape. I'm going to put as much weight on as I can. And there we are. Let's leave that overnight to set, see what we get. So it's the next day now. I'm going to try opening this up. I've taken the bricks off, so we'll take the top off and angle it down a little bit and we'll see what we've got. Okay, top comes off. That's a bit damp. Okay, there we are, and it moves. Now before I went about taking the top off, I double checked that the glue had dried. So this is the glue from last night over here, and that's now solid. If it was still liquid, I wouldn't have done this. Something bad would have gone wrong. Okay, so that is, and it is holding its shape quite nicely. There is a nice shape on there. So that is excellent. I'm pleased about that. Now, it's harder to see from this side. Now what I'm going to do is leave that to dry because these are both damp now. This is slightly damp and this is very damp. Now I can't leave it to dry. We have learned that you cannot leave the wood in the mould to dry. It doesn't dry quickly enough and it goes mouldy. Now what I'm going to do is leave it out. I'm going to leave it flat somewhere, and I'm hoping that the fact that we've glued it together in lamination is going to make it hold that shape now as it dries. And also, because I've now glued this together, all those little cracks that had appeared in the maple are now supported by the plywood behind. So the cracks didn't actually go onto the guitar body, but I think we are good to go. And the other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take a bandsaw and I'm going to saw out the guitar shape. So I'll mark it on here to make sure that I've got it centralised. And then I'll mark out that shape and cut it, and then we'll have a guitar shape thing. And what I'm going to do is cut it outside the line. I'm not going to cut to the actual line. I mean, this one's wrong now because I put the thing slightly skew. I know that this outline is not quite in the middle. So I'm going to draw a new one and I'm going to cut sort of maybe 1 centimetre, 2 centimetres outside the line. So I've got a guitar shape, but I've still got space if I need to mess about with it later on, and I will trim it when I put it together with the rest of the guitar. So leave that to dry. Once it's dry, I'll be able to flip it over again and I'll be able to add the final layer on the top. Now where you can see that's got that, if I can tilt it right, you can see that's got that nice guitar shape that we're looking for. So that is good to go. I'll let that dry for a few days in the warm. Okay, stop press. Things not working as well as I'd hoped. When I left this to dry, what happened is it all started to curl. and that's going to, in turn, started to make it delaminate around the edges. So I've quickly rushed back out and I've weighted it down, so I've still got the curve in it, so that still exists, but I need to let it dry like that now. Problem is, the bit that needs to dry most, the plywood, is underneath, and that's not going to dry, so I'm going to get the problem again. It's going to take forever, it's going to go mouldy. I'm going to have to figure out a way of making this dry quicker. So here we are, this is my temporary solution. I put it on a towel, so the theory is the towel is going to absorb the water. These various weights will hold the thing down around the rim, so I've still got that bow in it, which is good. The towel should absorb the water, and then every couple of hours I'm going to take the towel out, put it on the radiator to dry, and then put it back, and hopefully, if I keep doing that, it'll suck all the water out of the plywood, and obviously any that's left in the maple on the top will evaporate off. We'll see. So that was an interesting set of experiments, trying to press some wood into shape. It seems to work, but drying it out again afterwards, not sure that's going to work. Maybe we're going to have to try some other interesting ways of making that thing come into the right shape. So there we are, more next time. I hope that was useful, and please press subscribe if you want to.